Deep in the Eurasian steppe near the Okon River lies one of few cities in the still highly nomadic Mongol Empire at the height of its power, Karakorum. The people of the steppe became nomadic because of the dry climate, where plants other than grasses, already present there, had a very hard time growing, making agriculture difficult. Instead, a nomadic pastoral lifestyle was more suited for the harsh terrain and climate. Even near major rivers such as the Orkhon, agriculture was still hard because of the low rainfall and rocky ground, but the Orkhon River and the valley in which Karakorum were to be built still held some of the largest Protocities and were often the home of temporary settlements, which could be the size of a city, but instead of being populated by houses, they had tents and gers that could be assembled after there was no more grazing to be done. The reason for this is obvious: the need for water both for humans and animals, the protection provided by the river, and as a good trading position along the Silk Road. While nomadic, the steppe tribes have constructed permanent buildings, even if it was not whole towns, as elaborate graves and religious sites existed in the Orkhon Valley for centuries before Karakorum. Permanent buildings are also not useless for nomads, and they also stay in one place for many weeks or even months and can return to the same area after some time. The first real settlement in the valley was by the Uyghur Turks, who broke free from the Gurturks and wanted to create their own capital called Ordu Balik. The city mostly survived and thrived on trade as the largest city in the area, on a few comfortable stops on the final part of that trade route. Other than the new trading, several temples, barracks, and administrative buildings also sprawled across the city. Small agricultural communities had even managed to survive with the protection provided by the city. The city had a huge mall to protect the only real defensible part of the area, and was unlike the surrounding area in almost every way. Part of why the city would thrive was the Uyghur alliance with the Tang Chinese, which provided them with a lot of knowledge about the sedentary lifestyle and agriculture. But the harsh climate of Mongolia became even worse, with several consecutive harsh winters, starving and weakening the city, only for it to later be abandoned by the Tang and destroyed by the enemies of the Uyghurs. Mongols' rapid expansion into sedentary societies and the capture of most of the highly educated of these places made many interested in a Mongol capital, which Genghis arranged on his 15th anniversary as Great Khan. At first, it was only as a particularly large area full of extra large gers, chosen to be in the Orkhon Valley due to its religious and economical significance. Genghis himself never saw the construction of any permanent buildings, a task which instead fell to his successor, Ögedei, who organized the nation's many captured architects and construction workers to start building a palace and walls for the city. The walls and much of the city was built in the Chinese Yin style, since most of the workers came from that part of the Mongol realm, as well as many of its residents. The other main influence were the Muslims, mostly from Karakorum, who also used their style for part of the city, but all of the different peoples the Mongols had brought into the land brought their own unique style to the small part of the city. The walls were also a lot thicker on the eastern side, where the greatest population density also existing, protecting it extra from potential threat. The two major roads crossed the two axes, each with a corresponding gate on both sides. The road was built higher than the surrounding buildings for easy construction of high quality roads, which were needed for trade. The population believed to live in the city was 10,000, but only a fraction of the population of Karakorum actually lived in permanent structure or within the walls. The larger part of the population was not permanent, but instead visiting nomads sprawling outside the walls in their gers. A second wall, 250 meters square, surrounded the Khan's palace, decorated with green ceramics with pictures of animals at the entrance and decorative stonework continuing all across the palace. The only other major buildings within the second walls was a small recreational pavilion for Ögedei. A second smaller red and green palace also existed within the city. The city became the hub for all diplomatic actions of the great empire, with everyone from all across Eurasia visiting the newly constructed city for diplomatic missions. While very small compared to other trading cities along the Silk Road, the trade flowed through the city, enriching it hugely. Many traders were also sent forth from the city to bring riches from all across the Mongol realms. It was not only the trade that had been largely enriched by Mongol conquest, but also agriculture. The advanced irrigations of the nations in the Mongol sphere could enrich the soil of the Orkhon Valley, making agriculture a worthwhile endeavor. The city had mosques, Buddhist temples, and a church, all in the style of the respective communities. Manufactories, workshops, and warehouses also existed all across the city, transforming it and storing many of the goods flowing through the city, providing it even more wealth. But the Mongols were still nomads, so the court moved with the Khan, who only lived a few months a year in Karakorum and spent most of his time in other locations. There were also other places in Mongolia where the Khan resided, but with Kublai Khan's full conquest of China and larger split between the Mongol domains, more control was needed over China, while Mongolia became less central spot for the empire. The capital moved to China and Karakorum without a Khan, and the reduction in trade started to decline. Most of the skilled artisans of Karakorum also moved with the Khan to the new capital, leaving few to tend to the city. Droughts and a poor climate contributed to a further reduction of the power of the city. Karakorum became the capital of the Mongol once again with the fall of the Yuan, but only for a short while, as the Ming destroyed the city in the invasion of Mongolia to keep them from returning. But this was not the end of the city, as when Vajrayana Buddhism of Tibet spread further to Mongolia and became the state religion, Karakorum became somewhat of a holy site, and Eridene Su, the largest Mongolian temple at that time, and the most important one, was constructed near the remains of Karakorum. The stones of the city were used to construct the temple, in a style mirroring the girs and cities of Mongolia. While short-lived, Karakorum gives a glimpse into the early stages of denomadization of the Mongols and shows how a city built from nomads can be constructed, and it's different from other similar cities, full of diversity of both religion, culture, and construction. Karakorum carves out its own place in history as a mix between a sedentary and a nomadic lifestyle. This has been the first in a new series, likely replacing the country history episodes, exploring interesting historical sites, especially those more artificially constructed or planned. Hope to see you in the next episode.